Ethan Walker thought he'd hit rock bottom long before the eviction notice slapped against his refrigerator door. A former Navy SEAL with a shattered knee, a 7-year-old daughter, and a loyal German shepherd who sensed danger before it arrived. Ethan was a man fighting battles no one else could see. But nothing prepared him for what Blitz uncovered inside a filthy $20 storage unit that everyone else walked past. Behind moldy trash bags and rotting clothes, Ethan found a hidden world. The dress blues of a 4-star general, secret journals, and a recording filled with betrayal so raw it made his skin crawl. Worse, someone powerful wanted it all erased. Within days, a luxury SUV rolled into his broken driveway, and the general's son stepped out with a threat that could destroy Ethan's life. What happened next would force Ethan to choose between survival and honor. Before we dive into this unbelievable twist of fate, tell me in the comments where you're listening from, or simply write Amen if you're ready for the story to begin. The rain had been falling over Tacoma for 6 straight days, the kind of cold, metallic drizzle that seeped into walls, clothes, and bone. For Ethan Walker, it seeped deeper, into memory, into the places he still carried from years spent in desert heat and blackwater nights as a Navy SEAL. Now, at 42, those memories felt heavier than the duffel of gear he once carried on deployment. Ethan stood in the kitchen of the cramped rental house, the ceiling stained from an old leak, the windows fogged from the damp chill. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with the kind of body built from years of discipline, though now softened at the edges after injuries forced him out of the teams. His hair, once jet black, had grown uneven and peppered with gray, and a rough stubble shadowed his square jaw. The limp in his right knee, an injury from a breaching charge that went wrong during a hostage extraction in Yemen, was worse in the rain. On the peeling counter beside him lay the thing that punched harder than any mission gone wrong, a yellow eviction notice. 14 days. Pay or vacate. His jaw tightened. Behind him, a quiet voice broke the silence. "Dad, are we still staying here?" Emma stood barefoot in the hallway, hugging a faded purple blanket to her chest. She was 7, small for her age, with long auburn hair that curled at the ends and soft freckles scattered across her nose. Her eyes, big, brown, and too wise for a girl who'd buried her mother 2 years ago, watched him with a fear she tried hard to hide. "Yeah, sweetheart." Ethan forced his voice steady. "We're not going anywhere today." Emma nodded, but he could see she didn't believe him. At his feet, Blitz, the German shepherd who had once been his K9 partner in the teams, lifted his head. Blitz was 7 years old, a powerful dog with a steel-gray coat streaked with darker patches. His ears stood sharp and alert, his amber eyes intelligent and always aware. Blitz had a long scar over his right flank, a reminder of the night he'd taken a bullet meant for Ethan. Even now, out of uniform, he moved with the same controlled readiness he had on missions. Blitz nudged Ethan's leg gently, sensing the shift in his breathing. "I'm okay, buddy," Ethan murmured, though he wasn't. His wallet held exactly $236 after groceries, gas, and the part-time mechanic job he had just lost because his knee had locked up mid-shift. That money had to last until, well, he didn't know how long. He grabbed his worn field jacket, Navy issue from years past, and clipped Blitz's leash, though the dog hardly needed one. Emma slipped into her rain boots while Ethan locked up the house. Outside, Tacoma's sky was a sheet of iron. The streets glistened like spilled oil. Ethan lifted Emma into his old Ford Explorer, a '98 model with more rust than paint, and Blitz hopped into the back cargo area with practiced precision. They drove aimlessly for a while. Past shuttered storefronts, past the dockyards, past help-wanted signs that meant nothing for a man whose knee could give out at any step and whose nightmares still woke him screaming. Rain hammered the windshield. The wipers squealed. "Dad, where are we going?" Emma asked softly. "Looking," Ethan said. "Just looking." "For what?" "A chance." But chances were rare in Tacoma these days. He stopped at a gauche station, one of those rundown places with a flickering neon open sign. The clerk, an overweight 18-year-old with messy blonde hair and acne, barely looked up as Ethan paid for $10 of gas. On the counter sat a community bulletin board, cluttered with flyers. Lost cats, used couches, yard sales. One flyer caught his eye. Public storage auction, cash only. Saturday, 9:00 a.m. He almost laughed. He'd seen shows about storage auctions, people hoping to get lucky, hoping to find treasures left behind by someone who couldn't pay their bill. It was a gambler's game. A stupid one. But Blitz lifted his head suddenly in the back seat, ears pricked toward the flyer in Ethan's hand. The dog's attention sharpened in the way it used to during pre-mission briefings, a look that said he sensed something Ethan didn't yet understand. "You think that's a sign?" Ethan asked dryly. Blitz stared at him, unblinking. Emma leaned forward between the seats. "What does it say?" "Just some storage auction," Ethan answered, folding the paper. "Nothing important." But he kept the flyer. That night, he couldn't sleep. The roof creaked with every burst of wind. Emma slept curled against Blitz, breathing softly, the dog lying like a silent guardian beside her. Ethan lay awake on the couch, staring at the eviction notice pinned under a refrigerator magnet. He had 14 days before the sheriff came. 14 days to find $200. Storage auction. The idea gnawed at him. It was ridiculous. It was desperate. It was all he had. Saturday morning came with colder rain. Ethan carried Emma, still half asleep, wrapped in her purple blanket, to the Explorer. Blitz stayed close, the fur along his shoulders rising as if bracing against more than just weather. The storage facility sat behind a chain-link fence on the industrial side of town. A scattered crowd huddled under umbrellas. Most were professional bidders, men with heavy jackets, sharp eyes, and gloves meant for hauling junk. They glanced at Ethan, at the limp in his step, at the child in his arms, at the dog at his side, and dismissed him immediately. A short man in a neon safety vest, Rick Marino, the auctioneer, stepped onto a small pallet. He was in his late 50s, round in the middle, with a salt and pepper beard and a quick, businesslike energy. "All right, folks," Rick called, clapping his hands. "Unit 24A first, cash only. You bid, you buy, no takebacks." Ethan stood at the back, out of the rain, under a narrow overhang. Unit 24A rolled open. Furniture, tools. Even Ethan could tell it was good inventory. The bidding shot past $500 in seconds. Unit 17B went next. Then 32C, all far out of Ethan's reach. Finally, Rick stopped at a rusted blue door. "Unit 11F, he announced. "Last one this morning." The door rolled up, and a wave of sour, wet air hit the crowd. Inside was a wall of black trash bags. Nothing but trash. "Hard pass," someone muttered. Most people turned away. Ethan didn't. Something tugged at him. And Blitz suddenly stood taller, nose lifted, ears angled toward the deepest corner of the unit. His tail stiffened, not in aggression, but recognition, the way he used to react when detection training led him to something buried. Ethan felt his heartbeat shift. Rick sighed. "Anyone? $50 to start?" Silence. "20?" More silence. Then Ethan spoke. "20." Rick blinked, surprised. "20? Anyone for 40? No answer. "Sold for 20! Ethan exhaled. Blitz stayed locked on the unit, eyes sharp. Whatever was buried behind that mountain of garbage, Blitz had already decided. And Ethan, as he had on countless missions before, trusted the dog with his life. The metal door groaned as it rose, scraping its way up the frame like an old man waking from a long sleep. The moment the opening cleared shoulder height, a wave of rot hit Ethan so hard he instinctively turned his face away. It was a rancid mixture of mildew, spoiled fabric, and something sourer, like wet carpet left in a basement for a decade. Emma, still groggy from the ride, wrinkled her nose and buried her face into Blitz's thick fur. Blitz didn't flinch. The German shepherd stood rigid, tail low but alert, ears perked in a direction Ethan couldn't yet see. "Smells like something died in there," one of the bidders muttered behind him. The man, mid-40s, heavy-set with a patchy beard and a baseball cap stained from years of sweat, grimaced and walked away. The rest of the crowd drifted off quickly. No treasure hunter wanted a unit that looked like a failed landfill. Only Ethan remained, standing in the cold drizzle as if rooted to the asphalt. He took a slow breath, pulling the edge of his jacket up over his mouth before stepping inside. Trash bags, dozens of them, were piled from floor to ceiling. Most were black contractor bags, swollen and knotted, glistening with damp condensation. Others had split open, spilling clumps of mold-stained clothes and soggy papers. "Stay close," Ethan murmured. Blitz responded first, stepping over the threshold, paws silent on the damp concrete. His thick gray and black fur bristled slightly, his tail holding a stiff line. The dog's posture wasn't fearful. It was investigative, focused. This was how Blitz behaved on detection tasks during SEAL operations. Nose low, breathing measured, mind locked on something he could sense long before humans could. Ethan set Emma on an overturned milk crate just inside the door. "Don't move from there. You hear me?" She nodded, clutching her blanket tighter. "I won't, Dad." He grabbed the nearest trash bag. It sagged heavily in his hands. When he sliced it open with the small folding knife he kept in his pocket, a cold gush of rot-filled air escaped. Inside, waterlogged magazines clumped together like cement. He dragged it out of the way and reached for another. 5 bags later, his stomach turned with disappointment. More trash, more moldy clothes, more evidence that even $20 was too much. Then Blitz froze. Ethan had seen that posture overseas. Shoulders rigid, head angled, weight shifted to his hind legs like a coiled spring. Blitz wasn't alarmed. He wasn't aggressive. It was focus, sharp and unbroken. "What is it, boy?" Blitz ignored him and navigated through the maze of trash bags, each movement careful. His tail brushed against a broken laundry basket. His nose hovered above a bulging stack of black plastic. Then he nudged one specific bag. Not with his paw, never with a paw unless it was an emergency, but with the side of his muzzle, firm and direct. Ethan's pulse stirred. He crouched. Beside the bag, Blitz indicated and pushed it aside. Behind it, partially obscured, was a different shape. Something stiff, rectangular, wrapped in olive-green canvas. Military canvas. His chest tightened. He pulled the object out. It was a canvas duffel bag, older than anything else in the unit. The dark green fabric was worn but intact. The strangest part wasn't the bag itself. It was the knot. A perfectly tied seal-line locking knot. A precision knot used to secure gear during extraction missions and prevent shifting in transport. It was a knot Ethan had tied thousands of times. A knot you never saw outside the teams unless the person tying it had been military trained. "Where the hell did this come from?" he whispered. Blitz sat down, watching him intently, tail thumping once against the concrete. The dog recognized the knot, too. He was trained to. Ethan opened his knife and gently cut the canvas, not through the knot itself, but along a seam. The bag peeled open slowly. Inside, wrapped neatly in tissue and plastic, were clothes. Not ordinary clothes, museum-level quality. A deep blue army dress blue uniform, crisp and immaculate. The brass buttons gleamed even in the dull storage light. Ethan unfolded the jacket and froze when he saw the rank insignia on the shoulders. 4 stars. A 4-star general. The name stitched inside in gold thread read, General Marcus Hale. Ethan blinked. He knew the name. Anyone who had served longer than 10 minutes knew that name. General Hale had been a legend, decorated for decades of service, respected for his integrity, and widely mourned when he died 3 years earlier. Beside the uniform lay 2 velvet medal boxes. Ethan opened the first, a silver star, clean and flawless. The second held a Distinguished Service Medal, the ribbon perfectly preserved. "Jesus," he whispered. "Who would put these in a storage unit like this?" He dug deeper. Beneath the dress blues was a stack of photo albums. Ethan flipped open the first one. Color fading, but images still clear. Hale as a young officer. Hale and his wife, a tall woman with soft features and a warm smile. Hale holding 2 children, a boy and a girl with proud eyes. The next item was stranger. A small black micro-cassette recorder. Old but intact. Taped to it was a label. "Listen." Ethan hesitated but pressed play. A crackle. Static. Then a frail but distinct voice. General Hale's. "They think I don't hear them. Julian and Claire, waiting for me to slip, calling me confused, wanting the house, the accounts, everything Martha left." Emma shivered at the sound. Blitz moved closer to her. The recording continued, Hale's voice trembling with both weakness and betrayal. "My own children preparing guardianship papers, trying to bury me before I'm gone. I hid what mattered. Hid it all." The recorder clicked off. Ethan sat back, breath shallow. Blitz nudged his elbow firmly, grounding him. "This wasn't trash," Ethan said softly. "He hid this." He looked around the unit again, at the split-open bags, the random worthless garbage, the one perfect duffel. It wasn't accidental, it was camouflage. Before he could process more, Blitz stiffened again, this time facing the back wall of the unit. His ears flattened slightly, his nostrils flaring. He stepped forward, nose brushing the plywood paneling. Ethan approached slowly. "Something else?" Blitz nudged the wall, harder this time. Ethan touched the surface. Cheap plywood, out of place in a metal storage unit. As rain hissed outside and the storage facility faded into background noise, Ethan felt something shift inside his chest. This wasn't a unit full of trash. This was a message, and the dog who had saved his life before had just found the first piece of it. Blitz's claws scratched again, slow, deliberate strokes against the plywood panel at the back of the storage unit. Ethan froze mid-step, the faint rasping sound cutting through the damp silence. The dog's posture said everything. Body tense, tail stiff, ears angled sharply toward the wall, as if he could hear something buried behind it. "Show me, boy," Ethan whispered. Blitz stepped aside just enough for Ethan to crouch in front of the panel. The plywood looked wrong in a unit built entirely from corrugated metal. It was a cheap, thin sheet, nailed hastily along the edges. The wood was swollen from years of moisture, edges warped, creating a small, visible gap near the bottom. Ethan ran a hand across it. His palm came away dusty. "Someone didn't want this seen," he muttered. His instinct sharpened, an instinct honed through years breaking into compounds, breaching doors, and reading improvisation on the battlefield. Poor craftsmanship usually meant someone was in a hurry, or desperate. Emma watched from the crate near the entrance, hugging her knees. "Dad, what's Blitz doing?" "He found something," Ethan said softly. "Something hidden." He took a breath, stood, and went back to the Explorer. In the rear storage compartment, he kept a battered toolbox, its red paint chipped, the corners dented from years of field use. It had belonged to his father, a Navy machinist, a quiet man with squared shoulders and permanently grease-stained hands. Ethan carried it everywhere, a small anchor to the life he lost before deployments had taken him away from home. He pulled out a long crowbar, cold and heavy in his grip. When he returned to the plywood, Blitz stepped to the side again, eyes fixed on the seam. Ethan wedged the flat end of the bar into the small gap and leaned his weight. The panel groaned, resisting, nails squealing against metal. He pushed harder. His knee screamed, but he kept going. With a final yank, the plywood snapped free, falling onto the concrete with a hollow slap. Dust swirled. Emma coughed lightly. Behind the panel was a rectangular recess carved between the metal studs of the storage unit, a secret pocket. Inside the hollow space sat two objects placed carefully, as if arranged with reverence. The first was an old leather officer's satchel, dark brown, almost blackened by age. The leather was cracked at the seams, the brass buckle green from oxidization. The bag had an air of importance, something carried by a man who lived his life in command. The second object was stranger, a tin soldier statue, nearly 2 feet tall, painted bright red and blue with gold accents faded by time. Its expression was frozen in a half-smile beneath a tall black hat. The colors were chipped, but the statue was unmistakably a toy, or perhaps a keepsake, far older than anything else in the unit. Emma tilted her head. "He looks like he's guarding something." Ethan swallowed. "Maybe he is," lifted the satchel first. Dust puffed into the air, but the bag itself carried a different scent. Dry paper, oil, leather. Carefully, he unbuckled the flap. Inside were items wrapped in cloth, handwritten notebooks, maps, envelopes, and another microcassette recorder similar to the one they had found earlier. Tucked beneath them was a small stack of sealed letters. Each envelope bore the same bold, precise handwriting. Hail, Marcus J. Private correspondence. Ethan's chest tightened. This wasn't trash. This wasn't even storage. This was an archive. A man's life, hidden with intention. He set the satchel aside. Blitz nudged the tin soldier again, more urgently this time. His nose pressed against the statue's base, pushing slightly as if trying to shift it. "You want me to move it?" Blitz stepped back. Ethan knelt beside the statue, hands bracing its sides. It was heavier than he expected, solid metal, not hollow like a toy. He rocked it gently. Nothing. But Blitz whined, low and insistent, and pressed his nose against the exact same spot along the golden trim at the base. "Okay, okay." Ethan ran his fingers along the edge. The paint was cracked. Beneath his touch, he felt a faint line, not decorative but intentional, almost like a latch. He pressed. A soft metallic click echoed in the hollow space. A section of the base popped open, a disguised lid, maybe 4 inches wide. Dust drifted out. Ethan's breath caught as he reached inside. The first item he removed was a small silver box, tarnished but beautifully engraved with the crest of the United States. On the underside, he found an inscription finely etched, "With gratitude, First Lady Eleanor Price." Ethan stared. This was a presidential gift. Inside the hidden cavity was something even more shocking. Stacks of old currency, bundles wrapped neatly in paper, each secured by brittle rubber bands. He pulled one bundle out. Old-style $100 bills. Dozens of them. He counted in silence. 10 bundles. 20. 40. $40,000, he whispered. Emma's eyes widened. "Dad, is it treasure?" Ethan didn't answer immediately. He felt the weight of the bundle in his hands. Literal weight, but also moral weight. The cash was old yet crisp, preserved alongside the silver box. It wasn't emergency pocket money. It wasn't forgotten. This was deliberate. A stash, a contingency plan, a desperate man's insurance. Blitz sat beside him, pressing his shoulder against Ethan's arm, grounding him. Ethan stared at the money again, at the absurdity of finding that much cash in the middle of a garbage-filled storage unit he'd bought for $20. He felt sick. He thought of the $200 he had used that morning to pay the overdue rent. He had borrowed from a dead man's secret reserve without knowing it. He had crossed a line he didn't intend to cross. This wasn't money General Hale wanted to leave for his children. This wasn't inheritance. This was escape money, emergency money, the final lifeline of a man cornered by the people he trusted most. And now it was in Ethan's hands, hands that shook, hands that had spent years holding weapons, breaching doors, dragging bleeding teammates to safety, yet had never felt the full weight of someone's last hope until now. He gently placed the cash back into the statue, sealing the lid. Emma slid off the crate and approached him. "Are we in trouble?" "No," Ethan said, forcing calm into his voice. "But we have a responsibility." He looked at the satchel, the silver box, the statue that hid more truth than any treasure he'd ever imagined. And Ethan Walker, once a SEAL, now a father on the razor's edge of survival, understood something he had not understood when he arrived. This storage unit wasn't abandoned. It was entrusted, and the man who had left it behind hadn't hidden it for his family. He'd hidden it for someone with honor, someone like Ethan. The days that followed felt strangely weightless, as if the air around Ethan had thickened with the gravity of what he had uncovered. The leather satchel, the tin soldier, the old bills, the silver box, all of it now sat locked in a footlocker beneath his bed. Blitz slept in front of it every night, a silent sentinel who didn't need orders to understand what was important. On the third morning, after dropping Emma off at school, Ethan sat alone at the kitchen table with a cup of stale coffee. The eviction notice still clung to the refrigerator door, but for the first time in weeks, he felt something besides dread. Purpose, a direction, a choice to do the right thing. He picked up the phone and dialed the Tacoma Military Heritage Museum. After 2 transfers, he was routed to Dr. Michael Alden, the museum's senior curator. Alden sounded older, maybe late 60s, with a dry, cautious tone. He introduced himself as a historian specializing in post-Vietnam War military archives. Ethan imagined him as the type who wore tweed jackets, wire-framed glasses, and carried a perpetual sense of exhaustion from decades battling paperwork. "What you're describing," Alden said after Ethan's explanation, "is not just historically significant, it's priceless. If you can bring the items in, I'll have a legal advisor present. We'll authenticate everything." "I don't want money," Ethan said. "I want the items where they belong." Alden paused. "Mr. Walker, you may be one of the few who ever said that. Bring them in tomorrow morning." Ethan hung up, strangely relieved. Maybe things were finally turning. He was wrong. It was late afternoon when the black SUV turned onto the narrow road leading to Ethan's rental. The engine was too smooth, too polished to belong to a neighbor. Blitz was the first to react, ears snapping upright, shoulders rising like he'd sensed an intruder. His low growl rumbled through the living room. Emma, sitting on the floor coloring, looked up. "What's wrong with Blitz?" Ethan's pulse dropped like a stone. "Stay inside," he said gently. "Behind me." The SUV rolled to a stop. Glossy black, tinted windows, chrome grille polished to a mirror sheen. The vehicle was the kind of unnecessary luxury that announced power before the owner even opened the door. When the door did open, the man who stepped out carried the same polished confidence. Jonathan Hale, son of General Marcus Hale. He looked mid-50s, tall and lean, with a posture that suggested private schools, expensive cigars, and a belief that the world owed him deference. His hair was thick, silvered perfectly at the temples. His jawline was too sharp to be natural for his age. Cosmetic work, maybe. A navy blue tailored suit fit him flawlessly, the kind that cost more than Ethan's monthly rent. But it was his eyes that revealed the truth. Cold, calculating, and utterly sure of superiority, Ethan stepped onto the porch. Jonathan looked him over once, from boots to face, and smirked. "You must be Walker." "Who are you?" Ethan asked, though the dread twisting in his chest already knew. "Jonathan Hale," the man said, brushing a fleck of dust off his sleeve. "I believe you have something that belongs to my family." Blitz pushed forward, placing himself between Ethan and the stranger. His fur bristled, lips lifted just enough to show the warning beneath. Jonathan's gaze flicked to the dog. "And this must be the security system." "State your business," Ethan replied, voice low. Jonathan smiled like a man used to boardrooms bending to his will. "You acquired a storage unit filled with personal belongings stolen from our estate years ago. Items of immense sentimental and financial value. I'm here to retrieve them before we proceed with legal action." Ethan didn't respond. Jonathan took a step closer, hands clasped behind his back as if addressing an employee. "I want the uniform, the medals, the journals, the audio tapes, everything. Today." Emma, sensing the tense energy, whimpered softly. Blitz shifted instantly, standing half in front of her, a wall of fur and muscle, eyes locked on Jonathan's throat. Jonathan scoffed. "Control your animal." "He's warning you," Ethan said. "And I'm warning you, Mr. Walker," Jonathan replied sharply. "Possession of stolen property is a federal crime. If we involve law enforcement, you and your daughter will be out of here in hours. I trust you'd rather avoid that embarrassment." The anger that flared inside Ethan wasn't the hot, reckless kind. It was cold, controlled, a type of discipline beaten into him through years of combat and loss. "You want the truth?" Ethan said. "Fine." He turned back inside, grabbed the micro-cassette recorder from the top drawer, and walked out again. He didn't say anything. He simply pressed play, crackling, static, then the frail, vulnerable voice of General Marcus Hale. "Julian and Claire. They want everything Martha left. Trying to put me away. Take the house. I hid what mattered. Better gone than in their hands." Jonathan's face drained of color. Ethan let the tape roll. "My own son. Calling me confused. Saying I'm unfit. They want guardianship. My God, what happened to them?" Jonathan stepped forward. "Turn it off." Blitz growled, a deep, vibrating warning that froze Jonathan mid-step. Ethan waited until the recording ended before he pocketed the cassette. Jonathan's jaw clenched so tightly the muscles twitched. "You don't understand what you're playing with. My father's last years were complicated." "No," Ethan replied quietly. "They were cruel, and he knew who caused it." Jonathan's nostrils flared. His voice dropped into a weakened murmur, the arrogance stripped away. "What do you want?" Ethan studied him, the expensive suit, the fragile ego beneath it, the desperation clawing its way out now that his reputation, his real treasure, was in danger. "I want nothing," Ethan said, "but I won't let you erase your father." Jonathan swallowed hard. "Then let's talk, somewhere private." Negotiation. Exactly what a man backed against an invisible wall would choose. The threat had become a plea, and Ethan knew he had leverage now. Leverage he had never wanted, but could no longer ignore. Jonathan Hale stood in Ethan's living room, as if the cheap wooden floor were burning his expensive shoes. Outside, the wind rattled the windows, and Blitz sat in the middle of the room like a stone guardian, golden eyes fixed on the man who had threatened his family. Jonathan's suit, immaculate when he arrived, now showed creases as he paced. A man built for control, suddenly trapped in a situation he could not bend to his will. Ethan remained calm. Years in the SEALs had taught him how to face danger without blinking, and this moment, this confrontation with a wealthy attorney desperate to protect his reputation, felt strangely easier than many nights he had survived overseas. Emma watched from the sofa, tiny body curled under her purple blanket, her eyes swollen from earlier tears, but still alert. Blitz's tail rested across her feet protectively. Jonathan finally stopped pacing and exhaled slowly. "Let me be direct, Walker," he said, lowering his voice. "I'll pay you, handsomely, a settlement for your time, your cooperation, and your silence." Ethan didn't move. "Define handsomely." Jonathan adjusted his cufflinks, a compulsive habit for a man who lived in spotless suits. $200,000, transferable today. In exchange, you'll hand over all items belonging to my late father and destroy any sensitive recordings. It was more money than Ethan had ever dreamed of holding in his lifetime. Enough to rebuild everything. Enough to silence the eviction notice, doctor's bills, mechanic tools long overdue for repair, and the tightness in his wife's face during her last year of illness, memories that still haunted him. Ethan looked down at Blitz, who stared up at him with the singular loyalty of a dog who had followed him through fire. Money could keep a roof over Emma's head, but dishonoring a dead man, that was a stain no amount of cash could cleanse. Jonathan saw hesitation, misread it, and pressed harder. Think of your daughter. You want her living like this forever? Ethan's jaw tightened. That was where Jonathan made a mistake. I want her to see her father do the right thing, Ethan said quietly, even when it hurts. Jonathan blinked, caught off guard by a kind of integrity he'd never had to confront. He rubbed his forehead, revealing a thin white scar near his temple, likely from a long-forgotten tennis accident, not a life lived in violence or sacrifice. He was pale, chest rising with shallow breaths, the facade cracking. Ethan walked to the bedroom, Blitz pacing at his side, and returned carrying a small lockbox. He placed it on the table and opened it. Inside sat the stacks of old $100 bills. General Hale's emergency reserve. $40,000 preserved like a relic from another life. This isn't mine, Ethan said. It never was. Jonathan's eyes widened slightly, not at the amount, but at the act. Ethan pushed the money toward him. I used $1,200 of it before I knew what it was, Ethan continued. You'll get the rest back. All $38,800. Jonathan looked stunned. Why? Would you do that? Because your father wasn't hiding this from you to protect cash. Ethan's voice softened, not in pity, but in truth. He hid it to protect his dignity, and he trusted it would be found by someone who respected that. Jonathan swallowed. For a second, just the smallest fraction, his expression shifted into something almost human, a heavy emptiness, shame, recognition, the realization that he had just measured a poor man and found himself the smaller of the two. Finally, the attorney lowered his gaze. The settlement offer still stands, he said quietly, but I'll increase it. $300,000. No conditions besides returning the items and keeping the recordings private. This time Ethan nodded, not because he wanted the money, but because the money, given legally and transparently, allowed him to finally breathe again. 2 weeks later, Ethan and Emma stepped through the doorway of a small single-story home on the outskirts of Tacoma. The house was modest, white siding, blue shutters, a porch swing that creaked gently in the wind, but it was dry, warm, and theirs. Emma darted through the living room like a sparrow finally freed from a cage. It smells like cookies, she said, giggling. Ethan smiled. Probably the neighbors. Behind them, Blitz trotted across the hardwood floor, nails tapping lightly. The veterinarian, a middle-aged woman named Dr. Harriet Collins, tall and slender with silver-braided hair and a calm, grounded presence, had given him a full evaluation earlier that morning. She'd been impressed by Blitz's condition, noting a mild stiffness in his left hip, but nothing a little therapy and supplements couldn't help. He's a working dog with a lot of years left, she'd said warmly, scratching Blitz behind the ear. They don't make hearts like his anymore. Blitz had licked her hand in agreement. Ethan now stood in the doorway of Emma's new bedroom, watching her place the newly repaired ballerina music box on a shelf. He had taken it to a local watch and music repair shop run by Mr. Lionel Granger, a thin, elderly man in his 70s with round glasses and trembling hands, but hands that became steady the moment they touched gears and springs. His wrinkled skin had the warm tone of sun-tanned parchment, and he spoke softly, with a gentleness sharpened by decades fixing precious things for strangers. "It's cracked," Granger had said, holding the music box up to his glasses. "But so are most of us. Doesn't mean we stop working." He repaired it in 3 days. Emma pressed the button now, and soft chimes filled the house. Blitz lay down at her feet, watching the spinning ballerina with tired contentment. Ethan leaned against the doorway, feeling, for the first time in years, safe. He walked to the living room, opened a window, and let the cool evening breeze drift through. The last orange streaks of daylight stretched across the sky. Blitz padded over and pressed against his leg, head tilted upward, inviting a slow, grateful pet along his back. "You did good, buddy," Ethan whispered. "Better than any man." Blitz exhaled softly and rested his head on Ethan's boot. The music box continued playing in the background, its fragile melody moving through the air like a promise. Emma's laughter drifted down the hallway, and Ethan thought of General Hale, of the hidden statue, of the satchel tucked safely in the museum vault now, of the truth that money could never buy nor bury. Honor. He closed his eyes. A knock sounded at the front door. Soft, measured, unfamiliar. Ethan opened his eyes slowly, hand instinctively reaching toward Blitz. The dog rose to his feet, ears pricking toward the sound. Ethan stepped forward. Blitz stepped in front of him. And the chapter ends there, with Ethan's fingers brushing the doorknob, unsure of what waits on the other side.